Today is the day. Steve Baker, a journalist, has to self-surrender in Dallas over his reporting on January 6th. This man works for the Blaze Media. He is unambiguously a journalist. The Biden administration has begun arresting opposition journalists. And now I can say Biden is Putin. Why should I draw a distinction? They screamed. They were ranting about Navalny being falsely charged and arrested. Opposition candidates being arrested. Biden is having his principal opponent in this election criminally charged. Democrats are waging political lawfare to stop Trump. And now, journalists who dare expose the lies of the government on January 6th will face persecution and prosecution. Today's that day. I will add, I am recording this early, and by the time this story goes up, there may have been changes, but this story is important. I'd like to read it for you. Blaze News investigative journalist Steve Baker said the FBI wants him to self-surrender to the agency Friday morning in Dallas over his January 6th reporting. Baker told Blaze News he's been instructed to turn himself in at the agency's field office at 7 a.m. wearing shorts and sandals, which he said signals that the plan likely is to go for humiliation and place him in an orange jumpsuit, handcuff him, and do the prisoner transport routine. He added that after he's taken to the Dallas courthouse, he'll appear at a 10 a.m. hearing before a federal magistrate. They didn't have to go this route, Baker told Blaze News on Tuesday. We've been told that my charges are only misdemeanors, and my attorneys have been assured that this will be an in and out affair with no intention to detain me. But rather than issuing a simple order to appear, they went the arrest warrant route. What's more, Baker said he still does not know what the charges against him are, noting to Blaze News the powers that be won't tell his attorney about the charges because they believe Baker will post them on social media, as is his right. Baker's Dallas attorney, James Lee Bright, added to Blaze News that withholding the nature of these charges against his client is a really unusual move. Bright also said he's hoping to get a copy of the complaint against Baker as early as possible Friday morning. Baker also said his legal team was told there are no requests to the court for detention, no need for bail, and the expectation is that he'll be released after the proceedings. Bright told Blaze News that he anticipates Friday's hearing to be simple. Quote, we do not know if there will be pre-trial travel restrictions, although that has been the norm for J6 defendants, even for misdemeanor defendants, Baker also said. It has also been universal that no J6ers are allowed to travel to Washington, D.C., which for obvious reasons will have a deleterious impact on my work. We also do not know if there will be any other accompanying restrictions or orders, gag orders, from talking about my case. No social media, limited social media, order to surrender devices and or firearms, all unknown. Wright told Blaze News that he's disturbed about what's transpiring with his client, especially given that Baker has been in full compliance all this time. Bright also said the federal government, 3+ years later, going after people who were legitimate functioning journalists that day, appears designed to have an absolute chilling effect. This guy, Steve Baker, has been on Timcast IRL after these charges were emerging. But I know for a fact that he worked alongside, not necessarily with the same company, but alongside friends of mine who are journalists, absolutely journalists. This is the Biden administration targeting opposition media in full force. These people are evil. They don't care for what's just. They don't care for what's right. They care for winning. And this is the emergence of, I don't like to use the word communism because that represents something from 100 years ago, but something new and authoritarian. I'm not a depressive person, but I'm not happy about this, Baker added to Blaze. I've prayed, Lord, let this cup pass from me, but apparently it's not going to. However, he also said it will be a relief to get this first step over with. Baker added that when he asked his other attorney, William Shipley, why the federal government is treating him like this, Shipley replied, you know why. You've been poking them in the eye for 3 years. Blaze Media editor-in-chief Matthew Peterson couldn't agree more, saying in a Tuesday evening statement that the federal government's treatment of Steve Baker is outrageous. He's had unknown charges hanging over his head for years. But after we started working with him, the government sprang back into action. There was no need to put him in a jumpsuit or handcuffs, except as a humiliation ritual or a show. which seems to be exactly what they are planning on doing on Friday. We will be showing the world footage from January 6th that shows Steve was clearly present that day as an independent journalist. Government retaliation, such as this against journalists, contradicts the very idea of a free press, the purpose of our form of government, and what was once the American way of life. Any journalist, and shout out to Ducey, should be asking the Biden administration why they are charging a journalist over January 6th. This is shocking. You know, man, there are people who have already fled this country because people ask that question, at what point is it time to flee? You look back to World War II and many people, they fled Russia. They fled Nazi Germany. I don't know. Don't look at me. I'm just pointing out that there are people who are already fleeing because of things like this. Because the Biden administration, the Democrats and the deep state are rogue, evil, authoritarian operatives. Pure evil. You don't get more evil than this. Oh, they may justify their actions saying we stabilize the world, we prevent war. The ends justify the means. Evil. That's it. They don't need to arrest this guy. They literally don't. You can make an argument for, oh, there's got to be war with Ukraine. Tell me the argument. Okay. Putin would expand. He'd invade Europe, all that stuff. We've heard it. But arresting Steve Baker does what? What does it do? Nothing. Nothing. It's just malice. They're going to say government retaliation such as this against journalists contradicts the very idea of a free press, the purpose of our form of government, and what was once the American way of life. This should not be happening in America. Baker announced in December that the FBI said the U.S. Department of Justice would be charging him for his January 6th reporting. But 2 days later, he noted the FBI said self-surrender was postponed until after Christmas. It's been a waiting game ever since. They go on to post an interview they did with him. We also had him on Timcast IRL. Last month, attorneys representing Baker told Blaze News the U.S. Department of Justice may be orchestrating a retaliation against Baker over his reporting. Quote, Steve's actions on January 6th have been known to the DOJ for 3 years. Baker's attorney said in a January news release. But it is only now, after Steve has broken 2 major stories, greatly embarrassing to the DOJ, that he is possibly being targeted for arrest and possibly felony prosecution. Any action taken to put him in handcuffs, hold him in custody, and have him transported to court by federal law enforcement will be nothing other than retaliation for his recent reporting. Baker discussed his legal saga in a pair of October commentary pieces for Blaze, detailing the ins and outs of the federal investigation he's been under following his independent journalistic work on January 6th, which began before he joined Blaze News. Baker's first January 6th analysis for Blaze came last October, following countless hours in a House subcommittee office looking at frame after frame of January 6th closed circuit video. And it had him wondering, did Capitol Police Special Agent David Lazarus perjure himself in the Oath Keepers trial? Soon after, the slow pace of getting an unrestricted look at everything recorded on the video prompted Blaze Media Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson's appeal to House Speaker Mike Johnson to release all the videos. Johnson did just that. Where's Congress to intervene? Congress should be serving as a check and balance against what the Biden administration is doing. Where are members of Congress to start going ham on this? Shout out to anyone who's in Congress, who works in Congress, who hears this, and bring it up to your members and say, simply, as a member of Congress or your boss in Congress goes to the press and makes this an issue, press it and force Joe Biden to answer it, it could put a stop to this injustice today. We need that pressure. There should be commercials running for this. Joe Biden's DOJ has begun arresting journalists for covering January 6th. What is becoming of this country? Joe Biden is a fascist. And I mean that. He is an authoritarian machine establishment fascist. Now, people say he's a communist. He's not. He courts communists. They don't like him either, though, because of Israel. In January, Baker asserted that just released U.S. Capitol closed circuit TV video clips from January 6th show Lazarus gave false testimony in the Oath Keepers trial. And as he has exposed them, they have sought to retaliate. Last week, Baker penned his latest analysis, asking why Kamala Harris was at the DNC and not the Capitol on January 6th. Interesting, to say the least. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.